The following program is an original production of WICC PBS Chicago.
Next month, Archbishop Blaise Cupich marks his one-year anniversary as the head of the Archdiocese of Chicago. How has he tackled sexual abuse, immigration, and declining attendance at Catholic churches during his first year? Plus, Chicago's Grand Crossing community gets a new neighbor, a global superstar in the art world, inviting us all to reimagine that Southside neighborhood and others like it. And Superintendent Gary McCarthy in the hot seat. Fed up with the violence, a group of African-American aldermen are calling for the firing of Chicago's top cop. But some, including Mayor Emanuel, are standing by his side. Stay with us tonight for all of these stories and much more on In the Loop. Good evening, everyone. I'm Lauren Cohn. This week, Chicago Archbishop Blaise Cupich joined Pope Francis and other top Catholic leaders in Rome for a special session known as a Synod on Marriage and Family. The Rome assignment comes as Archbishop Cupich approaches his first anniversary here in Chicago. In the Loop host Chris Bury takes a closer look at the leader of the third largest archdiocese in the nation and one of the Pope's favorite American bishops.
Archbishop Vigano will now read the mandate from our Holy Father, Pope Francis. That is the official appointment of Archbishop Cupich as the 9th Archbishop of Chicago.
The Pope's promotion of Blaise Cupich to head the huge Chicago Archdiocese, his very first appointment of an American bishop, signaled a clear change in tone. Like Pope Francis, Archbishop Cupich considers himself a pastor first and a theologian second. Brian Schmizek directs Loyola's Institute of Pastoral Studies.
In many respects, having Archbishop Cupich here is like having a mini version of Pope Francis in the United States.
And like Pope Francis, Archbishop Cupich speaks often about the poor and those on the margins of life.
I have found in the 40 years that I've been a priest, especially talking to people whose lives are really very damaged, and visiting prisons, and talking to people who are down and out, who are recovering from various addictions, that the greatest act of faith that those people make is just to believe that they can be forgiven.
Cupich, now 66, came to Chicago after leading smaller dioceses in Spokane, Washington, and Rapid City, South Dakota. He was raised in Omaha, one of 9 children from a family with deep roots in Croatia.
The body of Christ. Body of Christ.
In his first year, Cupich has made a point of visiting parishes across Chicago's entire ethnic spectrum. Latinos, who make up about 40% of the archdiocese, are the fastest growing segment of the Catholic Church, and Cupich has strongly supported federal immigration reform.
He recognizes the huge importance of immigration and the gathering together of people from many different ethnic groups into one city, and for us into one Catholic Church.
Father Thomas Ashman, who heads the Chicago office of the largest Catholic missionary order, says Cupich also knows the priorities of churches in the city's African-American neighborhoods.
There are guns in your neighborhood, that's more important. If your kids aren't eating, that's more important. If you feel that discrimination or violence against you is racially or ethnically motivated, those are more important questions.
From his public pulpit, Cupich has embraced environmental activism, spreading the Pope's message that Catholics have a moral obligation to tackle global warming. In Chicago, he joined EPA Administrator Carol McCarthy at Old St. Mary's Church, where a network of solar panels helps heat the building.
We're talking about an environment in which everyone can prosper. And we also realize that the poorest of the poor in the world are the first who are impacted.
Unlike his predecessor, the late Cardinal George, Cupich has spent far less time speaking out on traditional and often divisive Catholic social issues, including abortion and gay marriage. Manya Brashear-Pashman is the religion reporter for the Chicago Tribune.
I think Cardinal George led during a time when the church was really engaged in the culture wars, and he was considered a leader of those culture wars. And I think a lot of Catholics were exhausted by that. This is a different time. Pope Francis is really nudging his bishops to stay away from the culture wars and be more pastoral.
But what Jesus is telling us today is to make an act of faith that our lives count.
One reason for that may be to stem the decline of Catholic Church membership here and across the country. The Chicago Archdiocese has seen its numbers fall by more than 800,000 since 1980.
Behold the Lamb of God, behold him who takes away the sins of the world.
Archbishop Cupich has other big challenges too, including shoring up the finances of a Catholic school system that has been bleeding red ink and making some unpopular decisions along the way.
Some schools are closing, some will be closed. Some parishes are closing or being merged with others. And those are big challenges for any archbishop to face, but they'll be on the plate of Archbishop Cupich, especially in the coming years.
Joining us from the downtown headquarters of the Archdiocese of Chicago is the Archbishop of Chicago, Archbishop Blaise Cupich. And thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Chris. Good to be with you.
You've been appointed just about a year ago. What's the biggest surprise for you here in Chicago, your first year on the job?
I think the biggest surprise for me as I go through the Archdiocese, which is comprised of the two counties, Lake and Cook County, is the way that although we're very vast, there is a hometown neighborhood to the various places that I go, the parishes, where people have the same kind of Midwest life quality aspirations that I had growing up in Omaha, Nebraska. Yes, so that I feel at home so very easily here, I think, is probably the greatest surprise. It's a big city, a lot different than Rapid City, South Dakota, or Spokane, Washington.
We know from national surveys now that more Catholics are leaving the church in the United States than are joining it. 3 million fewer Catholics in the United States than 8 years ago, according to the Pew Research Center. What can you do, or what's the most important thing you can do as Archbishop here in Chicago to rebuild your flock?
Well, I think that we have to be very sobered by those statistics that are out there and realize that there is something that we can do, but we also have to realize that there are other factors that don't play into anything we're doing or not doing. People are being disengaged from practice of their faith in a communitarian way. We see also that various service organizations are having difficulty keeping the people who are volunteers, whether that's in things such as scouting or ways in which people do blood drives. Folks are living a more individualistic life today, and so a life in community. How do you get them back? Well, I think you try to look for a way in which you show that life in community is a much richer kind of existence. And sometimes it goes in cycles. There is a truth about the richness of life that comes in sharing it in community. That's really what religions are about. Religions are about people of faith coming together in community to realize that their life is much greater than who they are. And the more that we can open opportunities for that, we surely can't bash people, criticize them, or condemn them. That's a non-starter as far as I'm concerned. What you have to do is be inviting. Many parents and grandparents say to me, if their children or grandchildren aren't practicing, what can we do? And my advice always is be yourself. Let them know how happy you are in practicing your faith. Things will come around in time because they're going to notice that authenticity.
One of your very first parish visits here in Chicago was to a West Side church called St. Agatha's, where some boys had been abused many years ago, 10 years ago or more. Yet you apologized. Why did you do that?
Well, I think that it's always important to realize that the hurt that's inflicted on people with abuse, misconduct by clergy of children is a deep one. And so it's always important to reaffirm that sense of sorrow, regret, apology, because it does take a while for healing to take place. And if I can do anything to add to that healing, I'm willing to do that. I think it's very important for the church to continue to do that. We really never can do enough. As far as I'm concerned, and I take every opportunity to say more about that.
Do you think part of the reason for that decline in Catholics in America is a hangover from that era of priest abuse?
I know that it has shaken the confidence of a lot of people in the church, in the authority of the church, in the leaders of the church. And so that's why we as leaders have to be all the more vigilant to make sure that we continue to do what we promised in 2002 with our charter to protect children and young people. We owe it to our people to do that. And yes, I do believe that some of the erosion we've had in our attendance and in our membership is due to the misconduct of priests.
As we all know, in this political season, immigration is a raging debate, a hot button issue. You took a stand after Donald Trump made disparaging remarks about some Mexican-American and Latino immigrants. Why did you feel it necessary to jump into that debate?
Well, first of all, it wasn't just one individual I was commenting on. I think that we see in our political discourse an attempt to demean the immigrants who are coming to us in very disparaging words and characterizing their plight in a way that shows great disrespect. I think we owe it to not only to the immigrants and people who are fleeing very desperate situations, but we also owe it to ourselves. We are a country of immigrants, and we do not want the rest of the world to think that we've ever forgotten that heritage. So I think we owe it to our national pride to speak out whenever people are demeaned who are coming here as immigrants. It goes against what we believe in as a country, and it surely doesn't reflect very well in the world.
Were you hoping that politicians would cool their rhetoric on that issue?
I would ask them to be adults.
That's a big order for some of them,
yes,
as we know.
But let's all kind of grow up.
And here in this country, you have supported a comprehensive immigration reform. On this particular question of immigration, do you consider yourself an activist? You are taking a strong stand in a very political issue.
Well, as a grandson of immigrants, I want to be an activist, and I'm proud to wear that moniker. I think that it's important to speak out on an issue of the day that keeps people in the shadows. We have millions of people who are undocumented, and I can see, for instance, in my firsthand experience in the Archdiocese, I have young men who want to study for the priesthood, but can't because they don't have documentation. They've been here since they were 3 and 4 years old. And we have a situation where also students who want to study for professional disciplines are having difficulty studying and enrolling in universities because they don't have documentation or getting financial aid. So it is a broken system that needs to be fixed, and I do it not just as a Catholic bishop, I do it as a patriot of the United States.
Finally, and I have to ask you a personal question. You're a very busy man, but in your free time, what do you love to, what do you have a passion for? Do you have any crazy hobbies? I mean, when you can sort of turn it off from work for a second, what do you like to do to chill out, relax?
Well, a couple of things. I like to take long walks. I love nature. No matter what the time of the year is, I do like to get out and have that exercise. I try to get my exercise regularly. The other thing I like to do is I like to be with people. I have a good group of friends that I've had over the years from around the country. I've served in 6 or 7 major cities since I've been ordained. And so I do get together with them here or when I visit them just to sit around and have dinner, cook a little pasta, and enjoy their conversation.
Archbishop Blaise Cupich, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Chris.
On In the Loop, we appreciate it.
To hear more of Chris Bury's interview with Archbishop Blaise Cupich, log on to our website, wycc.org, and look for the link to In the Loop. One of the Archbishop's top priorities is to help curb the violence in Chicago. According to the Sun-Times, the Archbishop wants to tour the city's most violent neighborhoods with our top cop superintendent, Gary McCarthy. McCarthy is now defending his position as the City Council's Black Caucus wants him gone. Joining us to talk more about that are Krista McQuarrie, editorial board member for the Chicago Tribune, Ravi Baishwal, anchor and reporter for ABC 7 Chicago, and psychologist Dr. Tiffany Sanders. Thank you all for being here.
Good to be here.
Krista, let me begin with you. Is it time for the top cop to go?
I don't really see how change at the top is going to trickle down and make effective change in these neighborhoods. So no, I think it would make the alderman feel better. He doesn't have a very good relationship with them. He's been kind of dismissive to aldermen, which has not served him well. But I don't see how change at the top is really going to get to the core of why we see so much violence in certain neighborhoods.
And what's alarming, Ravi, that came out of all the meetings this week is we have a 21% increase in the murder rate through September as compared to last year. That's frightening to Chicago.
And those aldermen are very frustrated by that, and the dissonance between that and what they keep hearing from the administration, that crime is actually going down. And we do know violent crime is going down, and in a big way, part of a longer trend. But the frustration that those aldermen feel that needs to be reflected in the kind of sensitivity that Gary McCarthy probably should be showing here just isn't there. And that's what sparked what we saw at City Council earlier this week, where aldermen were just simply yelling at him.
Speaking of sensitivity, Dr. Sanders, one of the things that Mayor Emanuel has done is he's standing behind McCarthy, but yet he's pointing to this is about guns, this is about gangs, this is about jobs. Do you agree with that?
It is about guns, it's about gangs, it's about jobs, but what is the police doing to show a presence in the neighborhoods, these high crime neighborhoods that reinforces that we're here to support you? Unfortunately, we see the police downtown all the time in very ritzy areas of Chicago. But as I was driving to Kenny King College, I didn't see the police other than at a traffic accident. And that's probably the feelings that a lot of the individuals in these communities are having. And they're voicing that to their alderman. And the alderman has to say something. And so it was good that they went to the City Hall and had a very forceful conversation with the superintendent. Because if not, then the squeaky wheel will never get the oil.
Do you think, though, the superintendent, Kristen, got the message? He didn't seem very humble to me this week.
I mean, I think he got the message. I think he gets it a lot. Anytime there's a spike like this, you see backlash from aldermen. But I hope he did. I mean, the Black Caucus carries a lot of weight with the mayor. The mayor appoints the superintendent. He should be more responsive. Alderman Beal, Southside Alderman, was saying that he can't even get the superintendent to return his phone calls. That's not good. You need to be connecting with these aldermen. They are on the ground in their neighborhoods, and I hope he works toward better relationship with them.
So the suggestion, Ravi, maybe in media reports that this was somewhat political coming up before the garbage fee vote and the property tax. You're buying it or you're not buying it, or this is a genuine concern?
I think it's very genuine, because if there's nothing else that politicians are supposed to be doing other than protecting us and keeping our neighborhoods safe. And I think it actually goes even deeper than what the mayor's talking about in terms of guns and gangs and violence. I mean, I think it comes down to some broader discussion here, deeper discussion about values. And, as a broadcaster, to have to go in and do a weekend newscast and talk about 57 people being shot. People call me from around the country, friends who live here and elsewhere, and they look at these numbers and they just think, what is going on in Chicago? And I can tell them, oh, it's just happening here, it's just happening there. I even find myself falling into that kind of notion of kind of sugarcoating it a little bit, or saying it's not so bad. But it is bad, and it's bad because our values around that have changed, that somehow at some level it's acceptable in our psychology to have this kind of carnage, and that this kind of violence and disruption to human lives, and the destruction that happens to human lives, is somehow, I don't know, somehow part of the environment here. And once we have to change that headspace and start from that, maybe then policing strategies start from that, maybe the politicians, they start from that in terms of talking to their constituents. Because what we have here is an acceptability of something that is totally wrong. And what happens is when good people ignore bad things that are happening around them, just more bad things are going to happen.
Well, to piggyback on that, I do think we have become desensitized to the crime and violence that's occurring in our neighborhoods, because even if you look at the senseless violence and the murders that occur, that should be rocking us to the core. It's not rocking us to the core. No. But, to tag onto the point about the values, the communities have great values. They believe in raising their children, putting them in great schools, working hard. But however, the culture of what we have in our society in Chicago, it's still an influx in guns, and we don't see the mayor and we don't see economic vitalization in these areas. So if you don't have economic vitalization and we don't have jobs, then we have people who feel that the city and the culture of Chicago is not here to serve us, and so we're going to serve ourselves.
Let me jump in on that, Kristen. because years ago we had saturation units under Commissioner Weiss, if you remember, and under Mayor Daley. As soon as McCarthy got here, they got rid of those saturation teams that went after the gang units, specifically in certain neighborhoods. And then we saw crime go up in 2012. Should we bring them back?
I think it needs to be talked about. I mean, it's one of those issues that I think McCarthy is letting his ego interrupt what is probably better police practice. He also was resistant to bringing in help. During last summer when we had a huge spike in violence, bring in state police, bring in FBI. There is such a resistance, I think, because then it's kind of an admission of failure to reverse course. But clearly that's
issues.
It's right, and it's kind of ego-driven.
But if you're using things like ego and he isn't bringing in the right people, if this was a job or corporation, we would fire that person. So why shouldn't the alderman go up front and strategically ask for this? Because we want the services in our community. And what we see is that he's dismissive, he's not returning phone calls. I wouldn't want this to be my police superintendent. I want a superintendent who's responsive. And I think we do not see that out of McCarthy. And Rahm Emanuel should look at and saying, is there a better person for the job who's going to talk to everyone?
I think he has a very difficult job, and I also put some of the onus on aldermen. They get paid a lot of money to keep track of a 3 or 4 square mile piece of the city, and they have to own some of this too, and they need to be doing more to get their community members involved, to work together. Right. They put up these silos, and if something's happening on that side of the tracks, that's somebody else's ward, that's not my problem. They need to be doing more to be addressing this as well.
What do state legislators need to do here? Because I think, again, getting back to this values issue, that, this is the United States of America, and our states are autonomous to a certain extent. If there's a culture here that allows for stricter gun control, why, I know the politics of it down in Springfield, but why isn't that more of a topic?
All great questions, and we're out of time. We can talk about this all day, and we just want to give a shout out to our Cubs, who were terrific last night. So thank you all, Kristen McQuarrie, Ravi Baishwal, and Dr. Sanders for being here. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Well, if you don't know the name Theaster Gates, you soon will. Robin Robinson brings us this story about a visionary artist and his latest project.
A nearly 100-year-old building that had a date with the wrecking ball finds a new lover. World-renowned Chicago artist Theaster Gates bought it for $1. $5 million later, the doors are open to everybody. He invites us to reimagine the South Side.
People always want to see the space, from every part of the process.
A global star of contemporary art, Theaster Gates could be just selling his art and making millions. Instead, he's selling a vision, reimagining the South Side through art and urban planning. The Stony Island Arts Bank is his most ambitious project to date.
People get to celebrate the culture of Black people, where amazing music and exhibitions, performances, public talks will happen.
Located on Stony Island at 68th Street in Chicago's Grand Crossing neighborhood, this bank was built in 1923 and last abandoned in the mid-'80s after the area changed from all white to all black. Just 2 days before the wrecking ball, Gates convinced the mayor to let him try an arts-based transformation in a neighborhood that needs it.
People have been very receptive, but there are practical concerns like, will my kids be able to benefit from this thing that seems to be made for other kinds of people? Since you're making it so nice, is it really for us? I feel like I've committed a big part of my life to trying to figure out how can there be equity.
During the last 5 years, while Gates' star has been rising on the international art scene, he's leveraged his fame to create the Rebuild Foundation. It's already built the Dorchester Projects, turning ordinary homes into places where people create and connect. The Arts Bank is a major scale-up, a $5 million project. So you paid $1 for the building. And what did that mean?
Yeah,
it's like a free building.
Right. Things are very, very rarely free.
To raise the startup funds, Gates sold art that he created from the bank's only remaining currency, white marble slabs pulled from the building and carved into bonds sold for $5,000 to $50,000 each. Though the old vault remains, the new Arts Bank will hold cultural assets.
The mezzanine level is dedicated to Johnson Publishing Corporation's library and archive. And it's an amazing book collection.
The Johnson Publishing Company's library installed here includes its iconic magazines, Ebony and Jet, the leather-bound complete set, one of only 2 in the world. It's a literary journey I found very personal.
So I just picked up a volume and found Bill Cosby on the cover.
The Pleasures and Problems of Being Bill Cosby. Could that not have been a headline or a title of an article written today? And it is by my father. Wow. Music also plays a big role in the new arts space.
Frankie Knuckles. This is his vinyl collection.
Wow. How many albums?
About 3,500.
Down the hall from the Johnson Publishing Collection is the house that Frankie Knuckles built. He's the late Chicago DJ known as the godfather of house music. Frederick Dunson is executive director of the Frankie Knuckles Foundation, thrilled to partner with Gates.
He thought enough of the collection to want to keep it vibrant. And so it would give, in one of the conversations we had, he said that he thought DJing was a lost art on our community or our youth. And so this will provide them an opportunity to feel, touch, hear, and maybe develop their own sound.
Some of Gates' own work will exhibit here as well. It is very contemporary, using reclaimed materials and sending social messages. But for him, the real work of art is erasing the lines that divide us.
My greatest hope would be that Black space is seen as an asset, not a problem. That we would find ways of taking these guns off the street and taking them out of the hands of our young Black men. That we would create as many educational and economic opportunities as we do prison cells. That we would start to believe that the lives of poor people actually matter in making this world rich.
For more information about the Stony Island Arts Bank, check out our website, wycc.org, and search for In the Loop. Thanks, Robin. Now, before we leave you tonight, this family business has been more than 50 years in the making. We invite you to step into the arena with the Latting Rodeo. This past summer was the 61st annual DuPage County Fair in west suburban Wheaton, Illinois. The 5-day event brought several thousand people together to eat, shop, enjoy live music, and just have a plain old good time. The famed Latting Rodeo, one of the few remaining rodeo companies in the Midwest, has been thrilling visitors at this fair since last year.
I like to say that rodeo is one of the last true forms of true family entertainment. You know, you can bring your 80-year-old daughter, you can bring your 80-year-old mother-in-law, and everybody can have a good time. Good, clean family entertainment.
Mike Latting is the son of Thurl Latting, the late founder of the famous Kankakee County-based rodeo company.
Well, 51 years ago, my dad had a dream, a vision, coupled with a passion, that he wanted to do things that was not maybe the mainstream that minorities did. He wanted to have a rodeo company. He wanted to be a cowboy. There's things that he thought that he could do that maybe the world didn't think he was supposed to be able to do. So 1964, Latting Rodeo Productions put on his first rodeo. And I guess the rest is history.
And that history has led to a remarkable future. At a Latting Rodeo, you'll get the full experience of a rodeo show, bull riding, barrel racing, tie-down roping, trick riding, and even a little clowning around. Marshall Green is a professional rodeo entertainer.
Well, I carry several titles. Official titles, barrel man, funny man, clown. I don't care what you call me as long as I ain't late for supper.
Put the other one on.
Put the other one on?
Yep, right there.
Mike Latting handpicks his performers. Barrelman Marshall Green is from Somerville, Georgia. Trick rider Lindy Neely and bull rider Marcel Higgins-Ottman are both from small towns in southern Illinois.
I just recently graduated in 2014. I went to Iowa Central on a rodeo scholarship. My family owns 4 horses right now.
Ottman does more than ride for Mike Latting. He credits Latting with teaching him the ropes of this business.
He tells me every time I get on the bull, he let me know what I'm doing wrong, or he'll help me out when I need help, or if I'm struggling in certain spots, he'll tell me what I need to do right.
A kid will walk up and say, hey, I want to do that. My stock answer is you can do anything you want to do. If you put in the work, if you put in the time, if you put in the sweat, if you put in the effort, and if you have enough try, if your heart is big enough, there's nothing in the world you can't accomplish. And that goes not only in rodeo, but life.
Well, that's it for us. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Lauren Cohn. Good night.